Thanks for joining us. This is Omni View, episode 92, Balanced News Perspectives. Today is June 24th, 2026. Today's stories, multiple viewpoints, your call. U.S. Senate's rare bipartisan vote to limit war powers on Iran tests the balance between executive action and congressional oversight in ongoing Middle East conflicts. The U.S. Senate voted in favor of a resolution calling for limits on presidential authority regarding military action against Iran. Several Republicans joined Democrats in the measure, which the White House described as symbolic. Negotiators continue working toward a potential agreement within 60 days amid disputes over nuclear inspections. The resolution reflects institutional concerns about prolonged military engagement without fresh legislative approval. Deutsche Welle coverage shows supporters in both parties emphasize restoring checks on executive decisions that could expand into broader conflict. Critics within the administration, as reported by Al Jazeera, view the step as an unnecessary constraint that weakens leverage during active talks. Treasury and defense officials maintain that sustained pressure through sanctions and military posture has brought Iran to the table. Congressional backers of the resolution counter that unchecked executive latitude has historically led to mission creep. What specific language in the resolution distinguishes it from previous non-binding measures? Shifting now to healthcare accountability in Britain. Families affected by care at Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust await a major independent review expected to outline systemic failings linked to deaths and harm. The report is scheduled to examine how repeated incidents were handled over several years. BBC News notes that bereaved families and patient advocates argue the review must produce concrete accountability measures rather than repeat earlier recommendations that went unimplemented. Trust officials and regulators stress that changes already introduced address many identified problems. Both sides accept that multiple prior investigations found serious shortcomings. Which previous inquiries into the same trust reached similar conclusions? Meanwhile, energy costs show movement in the United States. Diesel costs in the United States fell under $5 a gallon for the first time since mid-March. The decline affects trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing sectors that rely on the fuel as a primary input. Bloomberg reports that industry groups note the reduction eases cost pressures passed along to consumers through higher goods prices. Energy analysts point to increased supply and moderating demand as the main drivers. Policymakers differ on whether the drop signals a broader easing of inflation or a temporary fluctuation tied to seasonal factors. How quickly do lower diesel prices reach retail goods? Next, a medical update from Australia. Leah Stewart, injured by a great white shark at Coogee Beach in Sydney, briefly regained consciousness and spoke to family members. She had been in a coma for 10 days following the June 13th incident. The Guardian reports that medical staff described the brief communication as a positive sign while cautioning that recovery remains uncertain. Local authorities continue reviewing beach safety protocols in light of the attack. Both sides agree the injury was severe. What factors determine long-term outcomes after such injuries? Turning to aviation maintenance. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency directed certain A380 operators to conduct extra wing inspections after possible structural cracks were identified. The checks target specific aircraft that have accumulated high flight hours. Bloomberg coverage shows airlines emphasize that the inspections are precautionary and that no immediate safety risk has been confirmed. Regulators stress that early detection prevents larger issues from developing in service. Both sides accept the need for rigorous maintenance on aging wide-body fleets. How are inspection findings shared across global regulators? Now to Australian parliamentary action on energy policy. One Nation's David Farley voted with Greens and Teal Independents to cap fuel tax credits for miners and farmers. The move drew criticism from industry groups that rely on the rebates. The Guardian notes that mining and farming organizations argue the credits prevent higher production costs from flowing into consumer prices. Environmental and fiscal groups contend the scheme subsidizes high-emission activities at public expense. Both sides agree the rebates reduce effective fuel costs for heavy machinery users. How do fuel tax credits interact with emissions reduction targets? In central banking developments, the Bank of Japan signaled caution. Governor Kazuo Ueda stated that inflation could exceed the 2% target and that additional rate hikes may be required. The comments repeated recent policy messaging from the central bank. Bloomberg reports that market participants expect gradual tightening if wage growth continues. Business groups warned that faster hikes could raise borrowing costs for households and firms. Both sides agree current inflation sits near or above target. What indicators does the Bank of Japan monitor most closely before adjusting rates? Turning to consumer product marketing in Asia, Dettol apologized and removed an advertisement in China that compared relationships to secondhand service and promoted finding a clean and untouched partner. The company said the intent was to criticize toxic masculinity. Chinese social media users condemned the framing as reinforcing harmful gender stereotypes. The brand maintains the message was aimed at discouraging certain male behaviors. Both sides accept the advertisement used explicit language about sexual history. They differ on whether the surrounding context made the intent clear or counterproductive. How do multinational brands adapt messaging across cultural markets? Moving to energy infrastructure plans in India, Gautam Adani stated that his conglomerate will pursue a new nuclear power program aimed at strengthening India's energy security. The announcement follows resolution of earlier legal matters in the United States. Energy planners highlight nuclear power's role in providing stable baseload capacity alongside renewables. Environmental organizations raise questions about waste management and project timelines. Both sides accept India's electricity demand is rising rapidly. They differ on the optimal mix of sources to meet that growth. What regulatory approvals are required for new nuclear projects in India? In robotics market analysis, Morgan Stanley increased its projection for China's humanoid robotics market after observing faster commercial deployment in real-world settings. The revision reflects observed progress in early applications. Investors see potential for robotics to address labor shortages in manufacturing and logistics. Labor advocates caution that rapid adoption could displace workers without adequate retraining. Both sides agree deployment is accelerating. They differ on the net employment effects over the next decade. Which industries show the earliest commercial uptake of humanoid robots? Shifting to cultural events in London, celebrities including Sienna Miller, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, and Maya Jama appeared at the Serpentine Gallery summer party in London during a period of high temperatures. Fashion observers noted Miller's choice of a fur coat despite the heat as a deliberate stylistic statement. Event coverage focused on the contrast between attire and weather conditions. Both sides accept the gathering drew high-profile attendees. They differ on whether such choices reflect personal expression or event norms. How do galleries balance celebrity attendance with artistic programming? In legal proceedings involving public figures, reports indicate Lee Andrews, husband of Katie Price, has been named as lead defendant in a previously unreported Dubai court matter following his release from prison. Legal commentators note the case adds another layer to ongoing personal and financial proceedings involving the couple. Tabloid coverage emphasizes the timing relative to Andrews' recent legal history. Both sides accept the existence of the filing. They differ on its potential impact on the family's public profile. What jurisdiction governs enforcement of Dubai court rulings abroad? Now, to really understand the Senate resolution on Iran, the constitutional mechanics deserve a closer look because most coverage treats the vote as either a major rebuke or an empty gesture. Article 1 gives Congress the power to declare war and fund military actions, while Article 2 designates the president as commander-in-chief. Resolutions without the force of law sit in the middle of those authorities. When a non-binding measure passes with bipartisan support, it signals to the executive branch that future funding requests or operational expansions may face legislative resistance, even if the immediate vote changes nothing on the ground. Knowing this, when you hear claims that the resolution stops military action, you can evaluate whether the speaker is describing legal effect or political pressure. Next time you see a headline about congressional pushback on foreign policy, ask whether the measure amends statute or simply expresses sentiment, and which committees control the relevant appropriations. Before we go, watch for further updates on nuclear inspection negotiations between the United States and Iran. That wraps up today's Omni View. Remember, the best informed people read more than one perspective. If this show helps you do that, share it with someone who values fair coverage. See you tomorrow, and before you go, this show is part of the Nair Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Fascinating Frontiers a listen, the most fascinating news from space and science. You can explore the whole lineup at neurannetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.